They say blood is thicker than water, until your family changes the locks on your door while you're deployed in a war zone. Sarah Mitchell had survived mortar fire, dust storms that swallowed convoys whole, and sleepless nights guarding forward. Operating bases in Kabul, but nothing prepared her for the message that arrived on her satellite phone one scorching afternoon in August. A photo of her brother standing in Sarah's living room, champagne glass raised, with their parents beaming behind him. The caption reads simply, "Thanks for the upgrade, sis. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening." Sarah stared at that photo until the screen dimmed. Her hands, steady enough to disarm explosives, trembled as she zoomed in on the background. There was her grandmother's quilt draped over the couch she'd saved 3 years to buy. The abstract painting she'd commissioned from a local artist in Seattle hung crooked on the wall. And there, unmistakable in the corner, sat her father's reading chair, the one that had never been welcome in Sarah's space before. The condo wasn't just property. It was proof. Proof that the rebellious daughter, the one who'd enlisted instead of going to law school like golden boy Brandon, could build something solid. Proof that choosing her own path hadn't been the catastrophic mistake her parents predicted at every holiday dinner. Sarah had purchased that 2-bedroom corner unit in Capitol Hill with her combat pay and a VA loan. Every penny accounted for. Every payment made on time, even from 8,000 miles away. She'd trusted her parents with a spare key. Emergency. Access only, she'd said. Her mother had squeezed her hand, promised they'd water her plants, collect her mail. Her father had nodded with that expression Sarah had learned to read in childhood, the one that said, "We'll see." What Sarah didn't know, couldn't have known while she was coordinating supply routes through Taliban territory, was that her family had been planning this for months. Brandon had always been the favorite. Straight A's without trying. A corner. Office at 28. A fiancé whose family owned half of Bellevue. But Brandon's spending habits had finally caught up with him, and his credit was a smoking crater. He needed a place fast, somewhere impressive enough to host his future in-laws. And Sarah's condo, with its skyline views and recently renovated kitchen, was perfect. The family dinner where they hatched the plan happened 3 weeks after. Sarah deployed. Brandon had joked about Sarah's empty condo going to waste. Their mother had mentioned how much easier it would be to maintain if someone actually lived there. Their father, always the strategist, had suggested that legally, if someone established residency and Sarah wasn't using the property, certain arguments could be made. No one said the word take. They didn't have to. Sarah spent her first night back on American soil in a hotel near SeaTac, jet-lagged and furious, scrolling through her bank statements. Her mortgage was 2 months behind, payments her parents had promised to handle from the account she'd set up for them. Late fees compounded like shrapnel wounds. Her credit score had nosedived. And when she'd called her parents that first night home, her mother's voice had been honey-sweet with practiced excuses. "We thought you weren't coming back, sweetheart. Brandon needed help." You understand family, don't you? Sarah understood family. She understood it the way you understand the weight of gear on a long march. It's yours to carry, even when it's crushing you. But Sarah hadn't survived Kabul by being unprepared. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and fresh coffee. Janet Morrison was 50-something, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for eviscerating property fraud cases. She listened to Sarah's story without interrupting, her pen moving in quick, precise strokes across her legal pad. "You kept records?" She asked finally. Sarah slid a folder across her desk. Purchase documents, mortgage statements. Emails where her parents confirmed they were merely house-sitting. Text messages where Brandon asked to borrow the place for a dinner party. Sarah had said no. Bank records showing the automatic payments that had mysteriously stopped routing through. And the key piece, a recorded conversation. Sarah had called her father from Kabul 2 weeks before coming home, casually mentioning she'd be back soon and needed to reclaim her place. His response had been caught crystal clear on Sarah's voice memo app. "You can't just show up and kick Brandon out. He's established residency. You should have thought about this before you left." Janet leaned back in her chair, and for the first time that morning, she smiled. "They thought you were just a soldier. They forgot you're also smart." The eviction process moved with surgical precision. Janet filed emergency motions citing fraud, identity theft regarding the mortgage interference, and illegal occupancy. She submitted Sarah's documentation, her deployment papers, her communication records. A judge reviewed the case and scheduled a hearing within 10 days. Brandon's lawyer tried to argue tenancy rights. He claimed Brandon had been paying rent, a lie that crumbled when Janet produced Sarah's bank statements showing zero rental income. He suggested the family had an informal agreement, which contradicted the emails where Sarah explicitly denied permission for extended stays. The judge's verdict was swift and unambiguous. Brandon had 72 hours to vacate. Sarah's parents were barred from the property, and because they'd interfered with mortgage payments while Sarah was deployed, potentially jeopardizing a service member's finances. Additional penalties were assessed. The day Sarah reclaimed her keys, she stood in the doorway of her condo and breathed in the space that was finally, legally, irrevocably hers again. The place smelled different. Brandon's expensive cologne, her mother's lavender sachets. There were scratches on the hardwood floor, wine stains on the carpet. Pictures of Brandon's engagement party still stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, but it was hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, "You're really going to do this to your family?" Sarah typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on the truth. "You did this when you taught Brandon the locks were there for him to change." The neighbors who'd watched the whole saga unfold, who'd seen Brandon moving in, who'd witnessed the police escort him out, stopped Sarah in the hallway over the following weeks. Mrs. Rodriguez from 3C brought her homemade empanadas. The young couple in 3A offered to help repaint. They'd known something was wrong, they said. They just hadn't known what to do. "You stood up for yourself," Mrs. Rodriguez said simply. "That takes guts." Sarah spent the next month slowly erasing traces of the invasion. She replaced the carpet, repaired the floors, took down every photograph that wasn't hers. She changed the locks. This time nobody got a spare key. She built a new routine. Morning runs along the waterfront, evenings spent relearning how to be home, quiet nights where the only sounds were traffic below and rain against the windows. Her parents sent letters. Brandon sent emails that oscillated between apologetic and angry. Sarah read them once and filed them away. Maybe someday there'd be reconciliation, maybe not. But it would happen on her terms, in her space, when she was ready. Because home isn't just 4 walls and a deed. It's the place where you're safe to be yourself. It's the space you defend not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. And some battles, the ones you fight for your own dignity, your own future, those are the ones you can't afford to lose. The condo still has the same skyline view. The same corner windows that flood the living room with morning light. But now when Sarah sits on her couch, her grandmother's quilt wrapped around her shoulders, she knows something her family never understood. You can't take what belongs to someone who's learned to fight for it, because respect isn't inherited, it's earned, defended, and sometimes reclaimed one legal document at a time. And in the end, the strongest walls aren't the ones that keep people out, they're the ones that remind you who you are when everyone else forgets. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you believe in standing up for what's rightfully yours, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter, and so does your voice. I'll see you in the next one.